Hey guys, this is Amy Lee. This is my channel, Work Hard Eat Kind, and today I'm going to be doing a story time video about when we survived a tornado.
But it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it.
Now I do want to preface this video with this was a very traumatic event. It was something that happened and I'm personally still not recovered from, and it hurts. There may be crying, I may get upset, I may have a lot of jump cuts from editing this video to try to make it smoother and more cohesive just due to the nature of the video, but it's something I feel led to share. I've been trying to share it for a long time, but I feel like today is the day. So today, in case I don't get this up later today, is April 27th of 2018, and the day that I will be talking about is April 27th, 2014. On this day, we had been warned ahead of time by many days that severe weather was a potential. We were told that there were many modes of severe weather that could occur: hail, heavy wind, and even tornadoes. But as the event came closer and closer, they issued a potentially dangerous situation. And what this means is, statistically, you have a higher chance of stronger and more long-track tornadoes. I actually am very well versed in meteorology because I wanted to be a storm chaser ever since I was a little kid, about 3rd grade. I used to be scared to death of storms, and when I was about in 3rd grade, my mom actually had a friend do a video, and that video was education about tornadoes and storms and how they work, or at least what we understood of how they worked, and it also showed storm chasers. It's actually something that I still would love to do sometime in my life if I ever get the ability to do so, and Reed Timmer is one of my favorite people in the world, and I would hug him so much. I would hug him, and he is literally one of my favorite people. So at the time that this whole situation happened, I did actually write in a book everything that had happened, so that no matter what, I could always go back and read and be reminded. So the day came, and what was I doing? I was following all the storm chasers. There was a lot of big guys. Even Reed Timmer was in Arkansas. They were in different various locations, so I was following live streams and seeing where everybody was at. I was following the weather. It was a nice day, and honestly there's not that much rain, and it was just kind of overcast. It didn't seem like a potentially dangerous day. I had made supper and had set it aside so that we could eat before the storm got there. I had went outside to take pictures because, if you ask my husband, my Facebook is usually full of cloudies, or cloud selfies as he likes to call them, because I love storm photography. I love cloud photography. It's one of my favorite things to photograph, and so that's what I was doing as this storm had approached. I'd gone back and forth checking on my kids. They were still little, and one of my kids was actually across the street with my mother-in-law at the time, and my middle son and my niece actually walked next door to my Nana's. My in-laws live across the street. Nana lived next door. She sadly passed away about a year ago. She used to live next door, and then we live here. So we're all kind of this little family group here. And so they went to go check on Nana to make sure she had everything ready just in case, and that she was good to go. About that time, I'm like, okay, I'll go make sure I've got everything that I need. I'll just double check. I put my wallet in our go bag. I took and made sure that any food was off the stove. About that time, my mother-in-law hollered up from the other house, because I had the doors open, and said, Amy, I think it's time y'all need to go ahead and work your way over here. And I said, okay, we'll be right over. And I grabbed everything. I got everything in our go bag. I put tennis shoes on us, which normally I don't do. Normally I'll go out in these shoes like this, or I'll go out in flip-flops. I've done it before with tornado warnings. It's just how I am. But for some reason, something told me I needed to put tennis shoes on, just in case. I didn't think enough ahead to actually put clothes, like full sets of clothes, which I wish I would have now. I didn't get everything I needed. My husband's Glock that I bought him when we got married. It was magnetized in a safe place on a wall, and I didn't grab it. I didn't see a point. I started unplugging things. I unplugged my computer just in case. We had just bought a new TV, so I had unplugged that. We were just basically kind of doing that and trying to essentially just get prepared. That's what you're supposed to do, you know? We started out the door, and I think this is one of the hard parts for me. If you watched my What's in My Vegan Bag video, I'll link it here or down there one. That's why my keys mean so much to me, because I didn't know that day was the last day I was going to lock that door and shut it. We got about midway between the two houses, and the sirens started going off. And so I picked up Mark, who was probably about 2, and I told Madison to run straight for her mamaw, which she did. And we got in the house, and they had the news going, and they were watching what's going on. So as we got the kids all in the house, and they were getting basically settled in, waiting to see if we needed to go ahead and get in the shelter, which was right by the house, I went back outside. I took a short video. I actually do have that on YouTube, and I'll link that below if you're curious. You can see all the trees. You can't really see the houses, because I always made it a point, like, I don't want to expose my neighbors' houses. Like, I don't want them to be in my photography, you know, for privacy's sake. I try to be considerate like that. So you don't really see the houses, but you can kind of see the tops of them. Turn back around at one point, and I noticed the kids are lined up. My father-in-law's standing up there trying to direct them, and I walk back to the door. I'm going to refer to the book for a second. The next 10 to 15 minutes would change so many lives. I walk back in to check on everyone. My son Rylan asks, "Where's your camera?" I jokingly say, "In my pocket. I don't take pictures every second." Although the truth is, I find an excuse to capture these moments, these memories, in any and every chance I get. I hear 15 minutes away. I step back outside for one last photo shoot. I'm so protective of our privacy, I try to avoid taking pictures of our house. I wish I would have had one last picture. One strange thing I noticed was how fast the clouds moved, but barely any wind on the ground. I noticed a clear slot, a meteorological term I had learned from Reed Timmer and had seen him explain many times. This sign really made me consider how serious the storm was. I glanced back at the window. Lightning strikes, and the land and air are obviously in turmoil. Intuition that is built into our bodies is screaming that this isn't safe. My father-in-law had the kids lined up, and I said, "Are we going?" And he says, "Yes." I help my kids into the shelter, and I keep watch. We all filed in to the storm shelter and took our seats, except for, of course, this gal right here, who has to try to stick her head out the door a couple of times. But the lightning was so fierce and so constant, I just couldn't bring myself to actually do it. Our shelter actually faced east, so I could not see what was coming from the southwest. They reassured me that I would know when to close the door. I noticed the wind had changed directions. There was a green tint to the clouds, and they were heavily textured. I was describing it to everybody, and all of a sudden it stopped and got quiet. I was so mesmerized I had looked at my father-in-law to understand. He said, "It's time to close the door." I think a moment of panic happened there. I think my body realized that something was wrong. The wind had changed directions a couple times. The wind had picked up, it had slowed down, but when it actually all stopped is when I knew it was time to close the door. None of us knew it'd be the last time we'd see our little piece of the world as it was. I closed the door, I locked 3 lock bolts, and I asked anybody else if they would like to look out of the peephole. The peephole was just kind of like any peephole that you've seen at an apartment building or something like that. I could complain that the door was facing east, so I couldn't see the tornado. What I did see was astounding, though. You think you've seen dark clouds? These clouds were dark as charcoal. I was only able to glance it at a moment. I am confident in saying I would have been able to see the tornado if I had been brave enough to glance around the corner of the shelter. I imagine Helen Hunt in the movie Twister screaming, "I want to see it," and Bill Paxton pulls her away in the nick of time. But my husband wasn't there to pull me back, so thankfully I was cautious. I turned back to calm the kids. When I returned to my peephole, it was covered. I say, "Well, it's covered. I can't see anything else," keeping my eye on it just in case it cleared. Not a few seconds later, bam. No, not a spicy addition to my favorite Cajun dishes by Emeril Lagasse. Something hit the door. I jolt backwards to my chair as I feel the wind whoosh through the cracks of the door. Here we go, and starts praying, begging God to spare us and our neighbors. I jumped down to my knees, realizing we were in the tornado and a small vent at the top of the shelter had been ripped off. I wrapped my arms around my kids and I was on my knees praying that everything would be okay. The noise was so deafening. I don't think that my ears actually registered how loud it truly was. There was screaming, and I kept telling my kids to stop screaming, but I honestly don't know if it was them screaming, if it was our neighbors screaming, or if it was the winds moving so fast that it sounded like screaming. I've been told that that can happen. I still can't describe the sound. Many people describe it as a train. I see what they're saying, but it isn't quite accurate. I can't say anything other than it sounds like what it is. I will say through a few days later at my husband's brother and wife's house, their dishwasher made the closest sound, the whooshing and churning. All of this happened in less time than you can read this. It happened in less time it takes for me to say this. I would venture a guess 2 minutes or less. It was only a moment in a storm. The mind-boggling thought of knowing what was destroyed in only a couple of minutes. It's honestly hard to imagine. The storm climaxed and I didn't know if I was screaming or someone else. I believe I let one out, but in a snap second I switched back to mommy mode. I rubbed their heads and told them how much I loved them and that it was okay. Don't be scared. I looked up, trying to see inside. I saw swirling, light green tinted clouds. It was light inside, and as it passed, the light was gone. The smell became awful because one of the dogs had an accident. I know how scared we were knowing what was happening. I can't imagine the terror of not knowing or understanding. We waited only a few minutes till it passed. And noticed that there was a noticeable difference when each wall of the tornado passed, and not just the dirt that made it in. We were sick with the smell, so we decided to open the door and try to get out. I was sitting where I could see out the door as it opened. I expected maybe a tree down, maybe some trash thrown around. I couldn't help my reaction. Oh my God. My in-laws shushed me, but who cannot react to what I saw? I knew they were worried about Nana and her very poor heart because she was quite elderly. What I saw was nothing. How my father-in-law kept his composure is beyond me. Maybe age and wisdom. I won't know. I could see sticks that used to be grand trees. There were bricks from Nana's house littered about. We heard several loud beeps coming from various fire and carbon monoxide monitors. I walk out in disbelief. The sky an unbelievable purple. I look off to the horizon. The clouds are backlit with an almost neon orange and pink. A flash of lightning reveals a dark, wide funnel cloud leaving its path of destruction behind. It was dark enough we couldn't understand the real damage that was done. My father-in-law and another man surveyed the road and realized the whole street was affected. A lady from next door comes over, and she was chasing dogs, so we invite her over to try to help and contain her dogs. We found out the lady was pregnant and made sure she was okay. Nana had come out to smoke. Probably not the best idea, but who's going to stop her? Scaring us to death because we could hear gas lines pouring out. Nearby, I hear water from broken pipes. We try to figure out what we can see in the dark. My father-in-law and the other man walk up and down the street searching for people. A young boy, probably near 13 or 15, came by. His breathing was too labored, possibly an anxiety attack. I rub his back and explain to take the deepest breath he can, even if it hurts. It'll slow his heart and breathing. We make sure he doesn't have asthma. This young kid, my heart goes out to. He saw one of the victims who died. He explained the man was torn in half. You hear and experience those things in a war zone, not your neighborhood front yard. Certainly not as a young teen. The cell service was sporadic, and everything floods your phone, then goes away. My dad gets a hold of me and says he's on the way. It was much harder than this sentence implies. My text gets to Nick. Everything is gone. I get him on the phone. One of the he worked in the jail at the time, and I was speaking with one of the officers, and I explained to him it's an emergency, and he explains he is getting a hold of his sergeant so he can be replaced. That night was supposed to be his first night as acting corporal. He's on his way, my hero, my rescuer, and my protector. Waiting for him feels like hours. I'm trying to update Facebook and Twitter. We try to keep dogs corralled. It was very hard because how do you let people know? And I was reading back through the Facebook messages today, and I can remember the panic. Different people start arriving from various places. Apparently the police had started shutting the place down. It was kind of localized to a certain area, but they didn't want more people trying to come in. My dad calls asking where we are, and I'm trying to talk to him. Several people are talking. They're trying to explain things to me, talking over each other. And my dad's talking to me. He's asking questions. I have other people talking over each other, trying to get the information to me. And I finally, this is the only time I've ever raised my voice to my husband's family. But I told everybody to shut up. I can't hear anything when you're all talking at once. Thankfully, Nick's little brother actually calmly, he looked at me with a reassuring look of, "Stop, I will help you." And he did. I'm pretty sure none of them have ever heard me shout like that. I turn to check on the kids, and I feel a hand on mine. I turn and instantly know our signature hand caress. I wrap my arms around him. I know I'm not strong enough to hurt him, but I couldn't let go. His eyes were wide in shock, but of course he had walked in about 2 miles and had seen more than our immediate area. It was my husband. He later tells a story of a line of traffic. He parks and says a man comes up to him telling him they've cleared the houses, but that there were 2 fatalities. He didn't understand why the man was telling him this until he realized that he was in uniform. He tells the man he's just trying to get home, that he was a detention officer. I had fortunately met with this kind man earlier and had told him to keep watch. My husband sometimes jokes the man saying, "Oh yeah, your wife is looking for you." Because I was. We figure first things first, get the kids to my dad, get them out, get them safe. Nick explains a back road to my dad. We head off into the darkness, my husband's duty gun in his holster, my gun in my pocket. I still so feel guilty for not grabbing his concealed carry Glock off the wall that I bought around when we got married. Ready to face the disaster, Bonnie and Clyde, our kids, so young, we started down the road to the ballpark. It was so hard to get them to understand we couldn't step on things. Fences and trees were in the road, and we realized the concession buildings only had 1 wall left. We could see the solar lights on graves in the cemetery, though. The funny thing about tornadoes. We noticed water and first aid boxes, and I set them where we could find them on the way back. I remember stands, fences, and a few small buildings. We never climbed anything. It was all flat. We carefully navigate through mud and debris to a road that ended just behind the park. Asphalt, hooray! Sweating and already exhausted, I noticed how quiet it had gotten. We duck under lines and power poles, getting closer to the other road. I see a flashlight. I'm hoping and almost knowing it's my dad, but it was dark and I had left my glasses in the house. I hear, "Y'all watch out for those lines." I've never been so glad to hear my dad's voice. The only time we had to climb over debris was one large power pole. We navigate through a parking lot. A huge tree has blocked the road, but a crew is working on clearing it. The men asked if we were okay, but thankfully left us to go on as needed. We get my kiddos in the truck. I'm so scared because I had no car seats, but we had a plan. We found out another big storm was coming. My dad tried to convince me to go with him. He actually lives about an hour and a half away. I knew my kids were in safe hands, but I knew my husband needed my support, and I wouldn't know he was safe unless I was there. I cried because I wasn't leaving him. My dad conceded, and off into the night we went. I tell him, we love a good adventure. Here's our biggest one. I wave goodbye to my children and remind them to be good and to listen to my dad. Flashlights are our only light as we go back through the darkness towards our home. We try to look around. Ironically, we found a crawfish and a frog on our walk. A helicopter eventually was circling overhead. I found a cardboard, possibly once framed with other coins, with a dollar bill. This was my catalyst to my terrible humor. My tornado dollar from 1957, which I still have in a frame actually. We take some of the bottled water and first aid kits from the ballpark. Once again stepping over lines, discussing zombies and doomsday scenarios, at times hand in hand. We grab some things from the shelter, we close the door, and can't help but notice a large 2x4 rectangle of paint missing by the peephole. I assume this is where the bang came from. No dent. That door holding strong saved my life. The gas leaks were so thick, I think that we could see the cloud. Even knowing how clumsy I am, I bolted past as carefully as I could. Debris was everywhere. Vehicles that I didn't recognize were littered about. We found my van on the pile of debris the opposite side of the house. One truck was in the hedgeway. A vehicle had a dome light on even though the doors were closed. We named off all of the weird things we saw. We continued up the road to the highway. 8 cop cars passed us. No one bothered to stop and see if we were okay, but as Nick did, even I forgot he was in uniform. 2 nice officers at the checkpoint stop us and ask if we're okay, and tell Nick if he needs any help replacing his uniform to give him a call. I, being the wifey, joked that thankfully he's wearing the most expensive outfit that he owns. We continued down the road to the truck, lightning flashing in the distance, making me feel increasingly nervous about the next storm. We head down the road to meet up with Nick's family. When we get there, Nick and one of his brothers actually break out cigarettes, and I was half tempted at this point to try it myself, but I didn't. I rehashed my story, but soon realized I'm not the only one traumatized. I may have lived through the storm, but their home was destroyed. It was where they grew up. There were belongings of their life strewn about the countryside. We decided where we were going to stay and where we were going to kind of be for the next little bit. Next day we came back and my husband cautioned me that my emotions can be a little out of place at times and that I might cry. In the daylight, I couldn't believe what I saw. The only thing that was left of our house was the foundation, and everything was gone. We tried to sort through things. There were things in our yard that didn't belong to us. My van was actually on top of the house where our bedroom used to be. We never found much of anything. Odd story though, and I think most of us have one of these stories. We didn't find a lot. We didn't find our major appliances like our stove that we had just bought. We didn't find our refrigerator, but we did find the bottle of tequila that was sitting on top of the refrigerator that had never been opened amongst the debris. And if you're wondering, yes, we did drink the tequila. But we keep the bottle in my kitchen, and if you ever see in my kitchen where I have the wine bottles and things like that, it's just on the side there. It's been a long road to recovery. We've had our trials and tribulations. I always hold guilt that there's nothing that I could have done about it. I always hold guilt that I didn't realize my neighbors were home. 2 of them sadly passed away. One next on the other side of us was in the house. Their daughter was in the house. And I feel bad that I didn't know that she was home so that I could grab her up and get her in the shelter with us. In hindsight, I know there's nothing I could do, but these types of scars that are left on our heart don't heal easily. And I sit here 4 years later knowing that I still am in tears reading this. I still miss our old house. I still try to look through the top window of the door, forgetting that our door doesn't have a window at the top of it for us to look out. I still try to look for things that I no longer have, and even 4 years later, I'm still making lists in my mind of things that are still gone. Even just seeing a fortune cookie reminds me of the huge drawer that Nick used to have in our old house that was just chocked full of fortune cookies, and we'd hoard them and then randomly pick one out if we wanted a fortune for that day. I think of all the heirlooms that I will never be able to give my kids, like Madison's first lock of hair from her first haircut, the clothes that they wore home from the hospital, pictures. I had a ton of old family photos that my aunt Linda had given me, and I can't replace those. I think about the memories that we had there. That's the home that my husband grew up in. It's hard to lose everything. It's hard to, at that time, going just over to the next town and see that everybody else was fine. There's even people that were just across the road. There's houses that I can see from where I'm sitting because my front door is open, that yes, they had damage, but their house is still there. Ours was completely gone. We did have a lot of help. We did have help from FEMA. It wasn't nearly enough, but it's made me appreciate the small things in life. I remember my mother-in-law telling me about Noah. I say Noah because we have no clue who this person was. He was an elderly gentleman, long white beard, and he walked up to my mother-in-law and handed her an envelope and said, "Please give this to Nick." We still don't know who he is, but in that envelope was a $100 bill. And if Noah were to ever see this, just know it might have only been $100, but it was like $1 million to us, and we appreciate that. There was a lot of good that came from it. There was a lot of bad that came from it. We dealt with the best of people, and we dealt with the worst of people. I can say that it broke me. I can't necessarily say it made me stronger. It did encourage my need for education. I do run a small local page for local weather education and photography. I still continue with my photography. I am still an avid follower of storm chasers because I cannot let this fear take my passion away from me. I mean, it is difficult to be both extremely afraid and have a deep post-traumatic stress over your favorite, most passionate subject. We're still here, and as the years go on, I'm not sure if it will ever get completely easy or easier, but we did survive. And that's the story of the day that we survived a tornado. I love you guys very much. Thank you for taking time to watch this video. It may be extremely long, so if you lasted this entire time, thank you so much for sitting here and listening to me. Thank you for hearing my words, because if this story doesn't let you know how much I deeply appreciate every single person who supports me or reads something that I write, it means the world to me. It truly means the world to me. I'm not one of those people that just flippantly says, "Thank you, I love you guys, I appreciate you." No, I really do from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank you guys once again for watching this video. I hate to ask for it, but if you guys would like to see more from me, you are more than welcome to hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell so you'll be notified anytime that I upload. I do have a lot of social media links. I do list them in the description box below this video. And maybe this is where I got this from, guys. Maybe that's where work hard, eat kind comes from. Love you guys, and I'm going to encourage you as always to work hard and eat kind, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.